The date now is December the 17th, 1998, and we are resuming the interview with Thomas and Freda Trapp. Before we commence, I would like to correct a mistake I made on the preceding tape when I referred to S.F. Mark and family's address as 702 Agnes Avenue instead of 707. Please accept my apologies. We concluded tape 1 with the story of your grandfather's car almost being used as the getaway car in the biggest bank robbery ever perpetrated in years. Would you like to comment further on that very interesting episode?
I don't have much further to say on that, except that I think maybe the robbers were traced down to New York someplace, or the robber who was the spearheaded it. So that's all I can comment on that.
Well, that's a good ending, Tom. There goes the phone. Well, we'll just wait. Thank you very much. Well, Tom, I'd like to reflect, you might say, on some of the points you've already covered and ask you a few questions which I should have asked before but didn't, specific things. And if you can recall the answers of these specific questions, that'll just be fine. If you can't, and give us some general idea, that'd be just fine too, so people have some idea of the sequences in history. Now, the first one that I have in mind is that your grandfather eventually left Nicola and returned to New Westminster. Do you have any idea when he returned to New Westminster at that time?
I think it was about 1880 that he returned to New Westminster, not being successful in the ranching up in Nicola. But it's interesting to know that today in the Nicola Valley there's a lake named for him called Trapp Lake, and then there's Stump Lake, and then the big lake, Nicola Lake.
All right, Tom. When he returned to New Westminster, one of his challenges, you might say, or opportunities, was to serve as a witness of the prosecution in the for
the trial.
The trial, I should say, of the McLean brothers. Now, were those? You also mentioned about the Indian raid in Nicola. Were those McLean brothers part and parcel of the Indian raid, or were they the?
They were it.
They were it. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were the whole party. And they were hanged in the jail at New Westminster. It's interesting to note that years later, when T.J. Trapp was the chairman of the school board of New Westminster, which he was chair for many years, 20 years I think it was, that they named the school there the T.J. Trapp Technical School, but the apparatus where they hanged the McLean brothers was part of the school. So that was sort of an interesting sidelight on what had happened there in the Wild West.
Did you have any idea of when the school was named after your grandfather?
Oh, that was quite a bit later.
In the 20s, would it be?
In the 20s, yeah. Because he was chairman of the school board up until 1921, I think.
I see. Because I think Trapp Tech, as they call it, opened around 21 or 22 or something at that point. Well, all right, let's go back now to the earlier days again. you mentioned previously that your grandfather and his brother Samuel purchased the Dean brothers.
Right.
Yes, and that was a dry goods business, and was it also hardware as well?
Shelf and
Pardon?
Shelf and heavy hardware.
Oh, shelf and heavy hardware. Yeah. Now, where did he get the money to purchase that? He worked selling insurance, or did you mention that? You mentioned the insurance experience.
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess he must have been able to borrow some money. I think. That'd be around about 1880, I think.
1880.
When he and his brother acquired the Dean brothers.
So that, in effect, could be the beginning date of the T.J. Trapp and Company hardware.
Close to that.
Close, that's interesting.
So he bought out his brother, I guess.
So that's say around 1880 when the firm was founded. Did your grandfather and his brother ever work for Dean Brothers?
Yes, well, they worked for them. I think that's how they got started in it.
Mm-hmm.
They worked for.
They worked, yes. I failed to ask that question too.
Capacity, but they were both knew about bookkeeping and that kind of operating.
This might be a question which is not connected to anything specific, but during that period of time, I understand that many people mode of transportation was a horse. Did your grandfather own a horse?
Oh, yes, he had. At 407 Agnes Street, then there's Cunningham Street behind it, and then on that lane was a barn. So T.J. Trapp had a lot there in which this barn was, and he kept the horses in there. So they had a number of horses because the family used to ride horses like we would ride the convertibles, I guess.
Open air.
And they were quite well known, that the whole group of them, because I was reminded of that at the people at Kehoe's at the Vancouver Golf Club. And they used to see the Trapp tribe riding up North Road to go to their place of they call Sunnyside, which was the what will we say, the site that was established by their father, Joseph Dockrell, in 1883, out on the body of water called Port Moody. So when they went up to the Union Oil Dock. There was, of course, it's all gone now. The Union Oil Dock in Port Moody, and then they'd yell across the inlet to get somebody to come and get them. You see, because that was the only way, except at low tide they could walk around the inlet. And that's the way they brought the cow over.
The cow over?
I see. They had a cow in the summertime.
I see.
So the cow would have to come by the beach at low tide. So, anyways, there's one. They mentioned one is where one of the brothers or one of the sons of T.J. Trapp couldn't raise anybody over there, so he found a log and he put his clothes on the log and he pushed the log across the mile over the sunny side. So the wonderful stories of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a marvelous story. Just going back to a point you raised previously, and question I failed to ask about it. I'm referring to the New Westminster Southern Railroad or Railway.
Before we get to that,
Yes.
I think we should mention that T.J. Trapp, you see, he had this family now, but in 1886, he got married to this doctoral lady, and they went off on their honeymoon on the first CPR train that went east.
Yes.
In 1886.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah.
These pictures were taken in Toronto.
Oh, I see. The pictures on it. That's your grandfather and grandmother.
Can be, and then
Oh, yes. Those are their wedding pictures.
Yeah.
All right. I think that covers that pretty well. The thing I had in mind was the railroad. Also,
the BC Southern Railroad.
It was BC or New Westminster? New Westminster Southern Railroad.
Yeah.
The question I failed to ask was, do you have any idea when that was formed?
I'm going to say about
generally speaking,
1900. I would say.
About 1900. Just one last question about the railroad, Tom, and that is, when did the Great Northern Railway buy the New Westminster Southern Railway?
I would think it was about 1903. So because they came across the newly built bridge, and the bridge was built in 1904. So might help to establish it.
Okay, thank you very much. The other question I failed to ask was concerning your grandfather and grandmother's daughters. There were 3 girls, actually 4 originally, and Edith Catherine died at an early age, I believe. Juanita was a dietitian. Dorothy and Ethelyn became doctors. Now, there's an interesting story about Dorothy. I understand that she, shall we say, married into the Great Northern Railway and had the use of a private coach at one time. Would you like to comment on that, Tom?
Well, Dodie, as we call Auntie Dodie, as we call her, married Roger, a countryman who was the son of one of the vice presidents of the Great Northern Railroad out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And he came here for the wedding and came in the private railroad car, which was brought into New Westminster, and it was sidetracked down by Columbia Street. So this was quite an experience for the city of New Westminster.
I should say so.
To have the railway executive brought right into New Westminster on his private railroad car, which I don't think will ever happen again, not even with royalty.
Well, I would say that not too many people around here are aware of that famous story. So thanks a lot for relating it. It will go down in the annals of history. Something was really left out of it. When there's writing history of New Westminster, I might say. Thank you. Now, the other sister, Ethelyn, you might say had quite a famous record of accomplishments, which resulted in her receiving the Governor General's, or I should say the Order of Canada from the Governor General of Canada, and I believe that would be Roland Michener. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
Medal of Service.
It wasn't the Order of Canada?
Medal of Service.
Oh, the Medal of Service. Well, anyway, go ahead.
Well, it was presented to her by
Michener. Yes. I had read that it was the Order of Canada. Anyway,
Well, it's one of the, I don't know, there are three grades of
yes. But this is a very significant.
I cut it out of the paper when it first happened.
Oh, yes. Yes. You cut it out of the paper at the first happened. Yes. Yes. Imagine you would. Well, that's quite, you see, so I think I'll devote a little special time to that and go over some of the reasons why she received that award, as we state in this article, because it is of great significance. It is something that people don't receive every day.
She received an award for the 75th anniversary of West Vancouver.
Yes.
What
Okay.
did it say, Tom? What did you do with it?
Well, there were 75 of them. One for each year. Do you remember that?
75.
That's West Vancouver.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be.
That's right. I'd forgotten
Jim
about
Spilsbury and
let's see who else.
Monroe.
I'd forgotten about that.
Leslie.
Well, perhaps before we go on, I'd just like to say that
Raymond Collishaw, that.
Excuse me?
Nita, the one that served at the hospital, married the Air Vice Marshal Raymond Collishaw, the war ace.
Now, who married? I didn't hear what you said.
Nita. The daughter, Nita.
Nita. That was the name for. That's another.
Nita, Neita. She's one of the daughters. There was Nita, Ethan, and Dorothy.
Nita.
Well, there were four of them, but one of them died early.
You're referring. Is that Edith Catherine? Is that who you're talking? No, she died at an early age.
Yeah, that's it.
And Nita, is that Juanita? Oh yes, she was the Oh, I see now. I'm sorry. When you said Nita, I didn't.
But the thing was that she got married in London, but she was engaged for how many years because Raymond was out on an aircraft carrier, and he was in the RAF and the officials stayed in after the war and so on. And so Jodie's wedding, and then they went to England for her wedding. The family were going to go, and then the family decided he couldn't make it. Grandmother wasn't going to make it, and so I think Evelyn went over.
Okay, that's very interesting. I didn't realize that.
So that all happened.
Yes, that was.
Go and look it up again.
Yeah, but Raymond was recognized too in that 75 years because he lived up there, for
Yes. You see, that's put my mind all together.
He used to go in the parade.
Well, they had a tremendous dance that when he died.
They had a full military funeral of her in West Vancouver.
Wallace, the minister.
Yes.
He organized the whole thing, and he had 600 troops from Chilliwack, and the band from Victoria, and then they had a fly past even.
Is that right?
Yeah, where they printed one of them was shot by. Yeah, for his service.
And this, I'm getting a little confused again. Which daughter did this center on?
Nita.
Juanita, yeah. That was her. She had that connection. All right. Well, that's very significant. I didn't realize that. I remember you mentioned she was a dietitian. More was mentioned about it, but this is very significant. I appreciate that. Yes. Yeah.
He was a hero of mine. I always wanted to.
He was a hero of yours.
Yeah, well, I wanted to fly.
I see.
Fly in the Air Force, but the doctor said, "No, you're not physically
able. I see.
The eyesight so good.
Well, maybe just as well. Just as well.
Yeah,
that was almost a case of the Air Force, they say, was legalized suicide.
Well, my brother still thinks it is because he's got to go on a long trip to New York, and he says, I don't know.
The other son, Thomas Dockrell, who was your father, I think we've mentioned this, but I just can't quite remember if we did or not. But as I understand it, he, after returning from the war, he helped your grandfather in the business and also auctioneering. But perhaps we could talk about your father in more detail when I have the opportunity of interviewing you again, Tom, if I may, about your own life and times. Would that be all right? Okay, thanks, Tom. Well, before I ask you questions about Eflin in particular, I'd like to focus on your grandfather's interests and activities apart from the business. Now, you mentioned quite a few of them previously, but I wonder if you could comment very briefly on some on the following. For example, I understand that your grandfather, donated some land to the YMCA, and he was at one time president of the YMCA. You showed me a portrait of your grandfather, who was presented to him by the YMCA for his contribution to that organization. Would you have any idea when he was president of the YMCA?
I think it'd be around before 1926, because that's when they commissioned somebody to make a portrait of him, a painting, when he forgave the mortgage that he held against the building at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the portrait happens to be in Tom's home, and it's a very beautiful portrait. It's very lifelike too. It's just excellent. And I remember as a boy seeing that same portrait hanging up in the Royal Avenue YMCA. The property he donated was the Royal Avenue property, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you mentioned he lived just behind that?
Well, it was on between Cunningham and Royal Avenue.
Yes.
And he was on the south side of Cunningham, like on Agnes.
Yes. It was mentioned also that he was a member of the Board of Trade. Is that, you know anything about that?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Well, he's a past president, though.
Past president of the Board of Trade. Yeah. Well, I
couldn't tell you when that was.
No. The other thing, too, and this name always intrigues me, the Royal Agricultural and Industrial Society. That's a very interesting name. He was president of that as well, wasn't he? Yes. And how did that get its name? Do you know how the Royal Industrial Society got its name off?
Well,
nobody seems to know. I've asked, but maybe you might know.
Well, I can't really say, but the RA&I remember it quite well from my father's references to it. And you might remember there are a lot of pictures of the exhibition building. And I think they were established before 1900. And he was president of the RA&I Society for some years, and he was quite active in the forming of it, I believe.
Yes.
Because it was recognized as the fair.
Oh yes.
At that time.
Oh, so it was responsible for organizing and presenting the annual exhibition in Westminster at the time.
And those buildings, they had a horse show building that I remember.
In Queen's Park.
My dad was president of the RANI when the buildings burned down in 1929.
Oh yes.
So, and I remember it quite well because he was out at Sunnyside, and he had to come in, and the whole, it was in the summertime, and then they had a big exhibition organized for later on for August, and Winston Churchill was coming over to open it, but the buildings burned down in July, so they had no buildings, so they put it all up in tents. And Churchill came and opened it up at the time. And there's a picture of my dad and Churchill and other dignitaries in the quay. Now, if you look at that, he's going like this.
Oh, I see.
This, opening the fair.
That's very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
It used to be in the old market.
Yes. So, talking about the old market, I understand also that your grandfather was one of the founders of Westminster City Market.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, that was while he was auctioneering and,
Yeah.
and then the RANI just had just to be natural that he'd be part of that.
The other thing that comes up once in a while when I'm doing some research on the Trapp family, and I don't know whether this refers to your father or whether your grandfather, and that is the Cunningham Trapp Company. Could you fill me in on that?
Well, as I recall it, in 1929, grandfather decided to sell the T.J. Trapp Company to Marshall Wells.
Oh.
And Marshall Wells also bought the Cunningham Hardware Company.
Mm-hmm.
So the Marshall Wells called the new company the Cunningham Trapp Company. So that's how that happened. So he was out of the business in 1929, and then that's when my father started the Trapp Motors.
I see. So that's interesting. The T.J. Trapp, excuse me.
But there was a good connection there because the Trapp Motors had the connection that the T.J. Trapp Company had with the McLaughlin Carriage Company.
Oh, yes.
And the McLaughlin Carriage Company, of course, McLaughlin's went into the Buick.
Yes.
At least they used the Buick engine, and then they built this McLaughlin Buick in Canada. So it was logical that T.D. Trapp would have the McLaughlin Buick franchise.
Yes.
And he claimed it was the oldest General Motors franchise in Canada.
Yes, I believe you mentioned that, and that's very significant. Yes. Well, that's quite historic.
But there was another good sidelight on that. And I talking to my uncle Frank Trapp, who was a nephew of T.J. Trapp, and he said that in 1909 they brought in a whole trainload of McLaughlin carriages. But in 1910, they brought one carload of McLaughlin carriages. And the transition from buggies to cars was that dramatic in 1910.
It's amazing.
So,
Isn't that interesting?
The automobile had really taken over at that time.
Yeah. So is it that at that point, and partly being funny, I guess, but did he sell his horses?
He never gave up on the horses. He said, and he was quite well known driving his Buick around town.
Yeah.
Because he never got it out of second gear. So he could hear the gears riding when he drove in his Buick. But he liked horses much better because they were the ones that could get you home.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. They don't run out of gas.
No,
they don't get flat tires. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And all those kids have them too. They rode those horses that he had in the barn behind the house.
They also stated that he was a very religious man. Was he active in the church
he
circles?
He was very supportive of the Presbyterian.
Presbyterian,
church. New Westminster.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it.
Particularly poignant, when the boys were lost.
Yes.
His connection.
Yes.
I think the Reverend Henderson was his minister at the time. They were fairly close.
Well, remember the union of the church, and they were going to join the Presbyterians and
formed
the Methodist Church.
Formed the United Church.
Church.
Yeah.
There's several letters where he's writing to this friend Henderson or Berta or something. I think he had gone to, telling him how the girls would go to school soon and there'd be some more votes for the union.
Oh, I see.
But he said there's an awful lot of strangers in the church right now.
Yeah. People from the other side, from over the hill, yeah.
So they were kind of counting.
Well, that was quite a time in New Westminster, that breakup of other churches.
Oh, I would imagine so. When the Presbyterians and the Methodists became the United Church.
25, I think, when it was official. I don't know.
I see. Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. So was this something that did your grandfather feel that maybe the Presbyterians should remain Presbyterians?
No.
He was all for the unity. He was all for the union. And then emerged the Queens Avenue United Church. Is that?
Yeah.
I see.
That was the Methodist Church.
That was a Methodist church. Yeah. So the United Church seemed to come to the surface then in the early 20s, 1921 or 22, somewhere around there. That's very interesting.
Oh, 1925.
1925. Oh.
Union.
Oh, I see. 1925. All right. Thanks, Tom. Well, it's quite obvious that your grandfather was a very dynamic person with a tremendous amount of energy. It's not too many people who can conduct an extremely successful business and also be involved in all these other enterprises, and do everything successfully. Some people can handle one, and that's about it, So he was
that's how in business, you try to put somebody into another job, a better job, and they wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
They didn't want.
They didn't want responsibility. No. So I thought now perhaps we might just switch over to Eflin again. I read an interesting article by Ada McGeer on Eflin, and it contained the following items. Now perhaps you might want to comment on these. She mentioned that Eflin attended Hallows School in Yale. Mm-hmm. Is there anything, you know anything about that particularly that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I believe this was a girls' school called All Hallows, and I've run into other people whose grandmother, well, whose aunts have attended that school.
Mm-hmm.
So she went there before 1900, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, what just a minute. How when was Ethel born?
When was she born?
How old would she be at that time when she went down? I guess about 12, 10.
A residential Anglican school.
Anglican school, yeah.
Do you know the correct spelling of that? Is it Hallow? Hallows? Yeah, past the S?
I think so.
Yeah.
All Hallows.
Yeah, All Hallows. All Hallows. Okay. Right. Well, I was in Yale not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I guess, and they pointed out some real estate, and they said this is where the Anglican girls' school existed. And so that's why I had an interest when this came up. So I had some idea of where she was, and it was really a very isolated place in those days. Still is, of course. However, to carry on.
But everything was sort of isolated.
Oh, everything was isolated, Tom. You're quite correct. Yeah.
That was the main thoroughfare, of course, to the interior.
She studied, according to this article, occupational therapy at McGill University in Montreal. Then she later practiced occupational therapy at the Vancouver General Hospital during World War I. Is there anything you did? You didn't hear about that? No. Well,
did Ada say that?
Yes, it was in the article.
Yeah, well, that's why I
that's not
think
true,
it's
right?
not right, because
It's not right.
she was home with her family.
Yeah, could you? You don't think that's correct? Perhaps you could.
She was doing a little typing in the morning down at the
I see.
business for her father.
Yeah.
And otherwise she was there.
Okay. So she never went to McGill to study occupational therapy?
She could have, yeah.
She could have.
Yeah, before that.
But
she didn't practice anything.
She didn't practice occupational therapy.
During the war, she was stayed with
her family. During the war, she stayed with her family. I see. Okay. Well, sometimes
through the rough
of
period losing their son.
Of course. That's when the sons were lost.
Right.
Oh, well, that's good to know that was this questionable.
Right after the war, they all got the flu.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they retired, grandfather sent Ethlyn and his wife and Tom just down to Long Beach. For 4 weeks. To get rejuvenated.
To get rejuvenated.
Well, that's right at the end of the war.
End of the war. And did she study medicine at McGill University in Montreal? You know that's where she studied her medical training? Received her medical training?
Yeah.
Okay. And
she took some surgery too.
Yeah.
I saw that in one of them.
Yeah, postgraduate work, I guess, in surgery at McGill. Didn't say surgery, but it could be very well surgery, as you say. And are you familiar with her studying in Vienna and Berlin, or is that the figment of somebody's imagination?
That was the time I was trying to tell you about.
Oh.
Before the Second War, when in the 1927, 28, that she went over to Europe with her sister, and they drove around to all going through hospitals.
Oh, I see. So she. Now I'm getting the connection. Yeah. So and she visited Vienna and Berlin and doing it at that time.
Yeah.
I see.
Stockholm, Manchester.
Manchester was another place.
Manchester.
When her sister got married in London,
yes,
Nita, she stayed over after the wedding and went and took a course at Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, she wasn't graduated, but she got that course
I see.
towards her
Yeah, yeah.
that she wanted to take there. So that was one time.
Yeah,
She was in Manchester.
It's interesting, I appreciate you clarifying that whole thing, because some people write these articles, they sometimes get them out of context, So one was on the impression that when she finished her she did graduate studies at McGill, then she went to Berlin, she went to Vienna to do graduate studies. So she did studies, but not particularly in that sequence, and the studies that were involved more as visitations to various hospitals and so on. But the important things, I think, come out in the article, that she became the first woman trained in radiotherapy, and it's a form of radiation treatment, you might say, or X-ray treatment, and that in itself is very significant.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, you see, her father died in 33.
Yes.
And then her mother died in 35.
35.
So
yeah.
then there was no reason for her to stay put.
Yeah.
So that's why I think she decided to go over with Anita and needed to help her drive her and do some more research.
Oh, yeah. And she's also the first woman president of the BC Medical Association.
Yeah. She invited
all
her parties.
I wish they'd give it. Pardon me, I'm sorry.
I say she invited us to all her parties.
Oh, yes.
Parties that she had for the medical society.
Yeah. It's too bad they didn't put the date on that in this article, because but to me that's a very significant date. The first, etc. They think that women are just coming into their own now, but she was very active as a woman in those days, and that was long before some of the contemporary people even start thinking about women's rights, so to speak.
Right.
She's also the first woman president of the National Cancer Institute.
This was very, very important to be a first woman being in this.
Right.
And one thing I remember, we had an inquiry from Kingston, Ontario, as somebody's writing up the history.
Yeah.
And so they asked some personal experiences of Dr. Edwin.
Mm-hmm.
One was when she went to Honolulu on one trip. Like her father went there, Hawaii, for winters for quite a few years. That she substituted for a doctor down there. And then, of course, she had a little bit of surgical experience. So this fellow apparently had an appendectomy, and he thought she performed an appendectomy.
Oh, I see.
On this fellow. And anyways, this fellow, we saw it was a woman doctor. So the doctor told us, very unlike her, he said, this fellow said, Swahili doctor shit. That was that's what never said words.
So she's a well-known woman, I see.
Well,
knew how to handle a man.
Yeah. I think they accepted her.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Anyways, that was the experience with the successful appendectomy. He didn't die.
But it was through her efforts, too, of course, that they've established a national standards for radiation therapy, because she was the chairman of the Institute's committee on radiation therapy. And it's a national committee, and that's a director of the Vancouver Cancer Institute in the morning. Later on, and she practiced medicine in New Westminster during the afternoons. And
Well, she must have inherited a lot of this energy and intelligence from her grandfather, all right, you know.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not from her father. From her father, not her grandfather. I'm getting these generations confused here. And it went on to say that she retired in 1947 to West Vancouver. Is that? Did she move to that West Vancouver after she retired? She'd been there before that. Oh, she didn't. I see.
She bought the place and then took quite a while getting stuff.
So she actually had that property before she retired. You mentioned something. Well, Clewick, of course, now serves Clewick. That's the name given to her residence on Heath Road, and it's now owned by the municipality of West Vancouver as an arts and cultural center. And you say there's a plaque on the door. Would you like to describe that?
On the outside of the building.
Yeah, on the outside of the building.
That was dedicated to her father.
Her father, yeah. DJ Trapp, yeah. Let's see. I have some other things here about her. Pardon me for turning these things over.
Well, I got a little bit more. Can I just go down and get it? Just hang on.
Tom just gave me a publication by the BC Medical Journal, dated August 1972, and it's dedicated to Eflin Trapp. It's called Eflin Trapp, an Appreciation. And Tom gave me permission, so to speak, to read this into the tape, and I'll do that later on. It gives a full, complete story. This actually, the story basically of receiving the Medal of Service of the Order of Canada from the Governor General in 1968. And if you take a look at her background, she certainly deserves the Order of Canada without any question. Also, she was very active after retirement, as stated here, and I checked these points over with Tom and Freda, and they said they can't see any reason to believe they're not correct, and I'll just mention them. She did research in breast cancer in the first clinical research project in Canada. This is after retirement. There's no date given, though, but then she received an honorary Doctor of Science degree from the University of British Columbia. No date given on that. She received the Order of Canada, as I mentioned before, from Governor General Roland Michener, and that was in the year 1968. Now, she died in 1972, according to this article. She was born in 1891, is that correct, Tom? 1891, yes. All right, I was wondering if I might just conclude this by returning to your grandfather again, Tom. And this is something that interested me all the way along after telling about this dynamic man. Did he ever actually retire from business?
Oh, I guess he did, yes. See, he sold the business in 1929 when my father started Trapp Motors. So he had retired at that
I see.
time.
That's what he did.
Yeah.
Do you know what he did in his retirement? Did he have a happy retirement, or was it active retirement?
Well, the family we had family get-together,
Mm-hmm.
and I can remember him being there,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
but never saying too much.
Oh, I see.
You know, being quite quiet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they say still waters run deep, you know.
The sunny side.
Yeah.
He had the White House out there.
Oh.
I remember the White House that I owned recently, and until recently, and my Aunt Juanita told me that she sat on the lumber pile that built that White House out at Sunnyside in 1914 when the war broke out.
Oh.
She remembers studying the news, the war broke out.
Was his main entrance home, so to speak, 407 Agnes? He lived in Agnes Avenue, yes.
Agnes Street.
Agnes Street, rather, yes.
Yeah. It was really an avenue, but they call it Agnes.
Yeah. And that he maintained that until his death?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, we lived in it.
You always
My father lived in it. He moved into the old home and sold his own house.
Yeah. I believe you mentioned that he, like any normal human being, came to the point when his life drew to a close, and he was, how old was he when he died?
He was in his 90th year.
90th year.
Yeah, he was born in 1843.
Yes.
And he died in 1933, but it wasn't quite it. I think he was born in June, and he died in spring.
Well, I used to go to Hawaii in winter.
Yeah.
Oh, they went to Hawaii? Mm-hmm.
For 13 years, he went to Hawaii.
For 13 years? Oh, isn't that wonderful?
To the Royal Hawaiian Hotel.
Yes.
He had everybody looked after him.
Yes.
I knew one of the fellows that ran the island shipping over there.
Oh, yes.
T.J. Trapp. They all knew him.
Yes, I would imagine so.
Years,
Yes. I don't know.
They used to go down, remember the Orangi?
Oh, of course.
And the
Australia.
Niagara, those boats.
Oh,
the Royal
yeah.
Mail boats.
Well, that's the way they went to down to Long Beach.
That's the way they shipped me down to Long Beach in 1918.
Yeah.
19.
Worst part of the ocean to go down.
When did his, pardon me?
I think it's always rough going down.
Oh, yes. When did his wife die?
1935.
1935.
Yeah.
I see. I guess when the time came, it must have been quite a large funeral for him, too.
Oh, tremendous.
Yes. I would imagine he would have been a pauper.
One of the, I think there was, although I was old enough. Anyways, I know a nurse today who nursed him in 1933, and she's living, and she's in her 90s.
Is that right?
Yeah, and she's, her mind is so clear and bright.
Is that
It's
right?
a pleasure to talk to her.
Yes.
But she's got a life of her own that could be written down. Esther Paulson is her name. Esther Paulson.
Paulson. Paulson.
Yeah, her brother was a counselor in West Bannock, but he's long gone.
Yeah.
He went up to Squim in Washington. He lived down there.
Oh. Well,
but she remembers looking after my grandmother. Nursing
looking
her
after your grandmother.
as well as
Ah.
my grandmother.
Yes.
Dying years.
Yes. Well, I really can't think of any more questions to ask you. Is there something that I might have left out that you think is significant and should be mentioned?
The whole thing, the significance of his life to me was that he did so much even after he was 70 years of age.
Yes.
All that happened after that it's incredible for a person to be doing those things at that age.
Yes. It certainly was.
30 years.
Pardon me?
When you think of his earlier years and all his hardships.
Oh, of course. Of course.
When he was up in
Of course.
the ranch and places like that.
Well, he was filled with enthusiasm, vitality, and all these associations he's had too is certainly a reflection of the fact that he felt for other people and their welfare. So it wasn't that he just provided well for his own family, but in the long run he contributed a great deal to the community as a whole. And in my humble opinion, there are not too many people who could make that claim. So I congratulate you for being a great grandson. And I think that, and you too, Freda, I appreciate the time you've given me to talk about this wonderful man and of course, the marvelous family. And although he had the means to provide them with an education, they had the enthusiasm and the intelligence, which of course I guess was part of his character too. Yes, a very vital part of it, but was passed on to them.
Yeah, well, if he knew Andy Mead.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
If he knew.
If I knew Andy Mead.
And Dodie.
Dodie.
You know, the way they went after things.
Yes.
They were really
Yes.
good.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What a household.
Yeah.
Dodie had St. Paul.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Clockwork.
Yeah.
And she was the center of it all.
Yeah.
Great big old family house, you know, and everything.
Well, you've certainly given me a great deal of your time, and I appreciate all the background information you've been able to dig up on the family. You've spent a lot of time, very conscientious about that. I appreciate that very much indeed. So thank you very much indeed, Tom and Freda.
It's appreciated. We can be very thankful for all the things that have been left to us.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Can you think of anything that you'd say, well, gee, why didn't they ask you this, or why didn't they ask you that, or, oh, I just thought of something. But
So I think we've been pretty complete.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Pretty complete interview.
Well, then we'll draw this to a close, and once again, thanks a lot.
Now that we've finished,